So, first thing we need to know is what is a preposition? So, the easiest way to think about a preposition is that it is a word that shows the relationship between a noun or a pronoun to another word in a sentence. So, here on your notes, preposition is a word that shows the relationship between a noun or pronoun and another word in a sentence. Now, there's a whole laundry list of different prepositions that you could have in a sentence. So, we're not going to necessarily list all of those, but some examples are to, of, from, on, up, around, through, words like that. A good way to remember those kinds of words is to think about a preposition as anywhere a squirrel could go. So, like, a squirrel could go up a tree, it could go through a hole, it could go around a tree. So, things like that. Just a silly little way to kind of remember what a preposition does. So, like sentences, we have compound prepositions. And all a compound preposition is a two-word preposition. So, some examples of those are because of. Now, I'm trying to give you some pretty common ones that you'll see often. Next to, in addition to, instead of, according to, and then in spite of. Those are some common ones. Of course, like I said before, with the number of prepositions that we have, there are others. So, when we're talking about prepositions, we also need to talk about prepositional phrases. And a prepositional phrase has two parts. The first part is the preposition. And the second part is the object of the preposition. And our object of the preposition is the noun or pronoun that immediately follows the preposition in your sentence. So, when you're looking at your sentences, to diagram them, like last week, we crossed out the prepositional phrases. So, to figure out where a prepositional phrase ends, we've got to look for the object of the preposition. So, if we look at our first sentence here, the book was found beneath the newspapers. Beneath is our preposition. So, the noun or pronoun that immediately follows the preposition is newspapers. So, that's our object of the preposition. So this whole thing here, beneath the newspapers, is our prepositional phrase. Now, we need to know where our prepositional phrases are in our sentences because they function in two ways. And this is really important when we diagram them because we want to make sure that we're diagramming these prepositional phrases in the right position. So we need to know the two functions of a prepositional phrase. So the first function of a prepositional phrase is to act like an adjective or an adjective phrase. And when we have a prepositional phrase that acts like an adjective, it can easily answer the question, which one? Now, prepositional phrases can also act like an adverb phrase. And then an adverb phrase answers several different questions. It can answer the question where. It can answer the question when. It can answer the question why. It can also answer the question how much, and how often. So if we look back at this first sentence again, and we're looking strictly at our prepositional phrase here. The book was found beneath the newspapers. So beneath the newspapers answers the question where. So if it answers the question where, we know it's going to be an adverb phrase. So we know anything that acts like an adverb has to be diagrammed underneath our verb. So let's go through these sentences and let's label our subjects, let's label our verbs, and then we'll go through the diagramming. So in our sentence, the book was found beneath the newspaper. Our subject is the book, and our verb was found. Now we've got a helping verb here and a main verb. So when we diagram, these two words have to go on the same line because you can never separate a helping verb from a main verb in a diagram. So we're just going to think of was found as one verb. So let's go ahead and let's put our baseline. And then once we have our baseline, we put our subject, which is book. Then we will draw our vertical line that passes through our baseline because that indicates that that you will have a verb coming up next. So after that, we'll diagram was found. And in this sentence, we don't have a direct object, we don't have a predicate adjective, we just have our prepositional phrase left. So, when you diagram a preposition, it is just like an adverb or an adjective. You're going to draw a diagonal line, in this case, under our verb because it's describing our verb. So the slanted line is for your preposition, so I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to write beneath. And then off of your slanted line for beneath, you're going to put your object of the preposition, which is newspapers. So then we're just left with the article the, which acts like an adjective describing newspapers. So just like if newspapers was a direct object or it was a subject, we're going to draw a diagonal line under that to put the, because it's telling us which newspapers. And then all we're left with is the article the for book. Alright, I hope you guys are still with me. I know I'm going through it pretty fast, but that's only because I know this is review, and I know that you guys are really good at this, so I just want to be able to go through as quickly as we can. So let's take a look at the last sentence on this page. The party ended because of the rain. Now let's go through again, let's identify the different parts that we have in our sentence. So our subject in this case would be party. So your verb would be ended. And then this sentence is a little different than the first sentence that we diagrammed because we have a compound preposition, because of. So I'm just going to put a P over that. And we have to know that the preposition includes both because and of in this case. And then my object of the preposition, the noun or pronoun that follows it. Rain. So let's go ahead, let's draw our baseline. Let's put our subject, party. draw our vertical line through the baseline, indicating that our verb is coming next, which is ended. So let's think about this prepositional phrase here. So a good rule of thumb, whenever you find a prepositional phrase, you should try to figure out which of these sentences it answers for us. So, of these questions, because of the rain, tells us why the party ended. So if you look over here, why is associated with adverbs. So we know that because of the rain is going to be diagrammed under your verb ended. So, again, just like before, your preposition goes on a slanted line. And because this is special, we've got our compound preposition, not just one word like beneath. Because of is going to go on the same line because it's functioning as one preposition, not two different ones. So let's go ahead and write because of. And then our next step is to diagram our object of the preposition, which is rain. And then our sentence, we're left with just articles, which function like adjectives. So the goes under rain because it's telling us which rain. And then you also have the for party. Now let's do one last diagram, because I think this is something that's a little new for you guys, or something that maybe you haven't touched on in a while. This is a question. You have you read this book by Toni Morrison? So a good rule of thumb when you are diagramming questions is to turn your question into a sentence. So instead of having have you read, we're going to turn it into you have read, and then the rest of the sentence is going to stay the same. This book by Toni Morrison. So this helps us put our sentence in an order that we are more familiar with to diagram. But when you diagram a question, you need to pay careful attention to where your capitalization is, and it's always a good idea to go ahead and put your question mark in your diagram, just so when you look back at it, you know that was a question, not a sentence. So let's go through our sentence and label our subject, verb, and our prepositional phrase. So our subject in this case is you. And like our last sentence, we have, well, our first sentence, we have a helping verb and a main verb. And just like before, we count that as one. We can't separate the two. Then we need to look for our preposition. So our preposition in this case is by. And then our object of the preposition is Toni Morrison. So let's diagram this. Baseline, your subject, vertical line indicating your verb, and then this is where it's going to look a little funny, because I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to put my capitalization in, because it's a question. Have read. In this case, we have a direct object, book. So I'm going to draw my vertical line that does not pass through the baseline. Put book. And then let's think about what question by Toni Morrison answers. By Toni Morrison. So this one answers the question, which one? And if you look back at the front of your page, that question means that this prepositional phrase is acting like an adjective. So if it's acting like an adjective, we know it's going to go under one of the nouns. So by Toni Morrison is telling us which book. So we know that we're going to diagram that under book. So let's go ahead and do that. So we've got our line for our preposition. And then we have our horizontal line for our object of the preposition. And since Toni Morrison is the name of an author, we're going to diagram that on the same line. You also have the adjective this, and then you are finished, except to put your question mark in after Toni Morrison. I just like to do that so that I know, again, that I've got a question instead of a statement. And then just a few tricks of the trade to go over with you guys. Again, just to reiterate, prepositions can answer the question or describe anywhere a squirrel can go. And if you look in your assignment, I included a cute little resource for you. It's just a list of prepositions that are pretty common, and they're in the shape of a squirrel, just to kind of keep that image in your mind to give you a little hint. Also, something else to remember, compound prepositions go on the same line. Another rule of thumb, always determine what question your prepositional phrase answers. And then the last thing that you need to know about prepositions. When you have a preposition, you always need an object of the preposition. You should never have a sentence where there is just a single preposition. A lot of people will end sentences with a preposition. That's wrong. Like I hear a lot of people say, "Where are you at?" Drives me insane. Because your preposition always needs an object of the preposition. So anytime you use a preposition, you need an object of the preposition.